Welcome to In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay, where we get candid about what it takes to negotiate effectively. You'll learn from the challenges and successes of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. We help you change the nature of your negotiations and get more from every deal you do.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to In the Ven Zone, where we are passionate about helping you, the entrepreneur and small business owner, level the playing field in your negotiations. We want to help you level up those conversations so you are getting more of what you ask for. And today, I am really excited, as I'm always excited. I know I said this on my last episode. I'm excited about every guest because I just like learning from all of my guests, and it's such an incredible experience for me. But I am really excited to have Kimberly Bassett, who is the CEO and the founder of Fontis. And Fontis is a brand merchandising company, and we're going to have her tell you more about it. But Kim, first and foremost, is the mother of 6. She has been married to her amazing husband for 34 years. She is a serial entrepreneur, a corporate leader, a trainer, a speaker, and an author. She owns, and like I said, she is an owner of Fontis, and that is a women-owned marketing communication company that specializes in print and promotional products. I mean, hello, and this is one of the reasons why we wanted to talk, because it's 2020 still, and you're probably listening to this in 2021, but it's still 2020 when we're recording this. Promotional products in 2020, holy crap. Kim's business went from this massive high growth trajectory where they were getting ready to hire people in late 2019. By March of 2020, they had lost 98% of their revenue. But Kim and her team have clawed back. And right now, at the end of December, are only 25% below where they were in 2019, which is an incredible success story in this year of the awful COVID pandemic. So she has had her team focused on growing and rebuilding business, retaining customers, doing all sorts of things, and especially renegotiating both with her customers as well as with her suppliers. She's also started 2 online programs. One is called Coffee with Kim, and the other one is Fontis Insider. Her first book, called The Point of Mastery series, The Pivot, is coming out the end of January. So Kim, thank you so much for being here. Really happy to have you here. Love our conversations every time we talk. So welcome.
Thank you, Christine. I could not be more honored and more thrilled to be part of this. I have been watching you, and we met about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I would say.
Yeah.
And we are just kind of both trying to figure out what else more do we want to do. And it's just an honor. I'm so excited and that we've connected this way.
Me too. And yeah, I think it was like the 15th of December last year that we met. And it's, we met at an event, and it was everybody at that event. And there were, I don't know, probably about 500, 600 people there. And everybody was like all focused on possibilities and dreams for an amazing future. And, 2020, get clarity on 2020, and 2020 is going to be like the best year ever. Oh, wow. Was that a cruel trick?
Right?
That was a cruel joke. That was not fun.
No.
And I know, and I know you do too, some people for whom 2020 has been extraordinary. They have just been, they've enjoyed amazing, fantastic success, and hats off to them for being able to leverage their position in the market and to do all of those things. But let's be real. That is just not the case for most companies. Small businesses, especially women-owned businesses, are going under left and right now. Women are leaving the workforce in droves. And it's too much to ask. So you be the perfect wife, be the perfect mother, be the perfect, boss and the employer, and now be the perfect teacher, because so many moms are homeschooling at home too. And so, women, and especially in the United States, this is not necessarily as applicable outside the United States, but within the US, I mean, we are just seeing this mass exodus of women saying, I can't, something has to give. And unfortunately for many of them, it's turning out to be their careers. And so
Yeah.
I'm really excited to have you here as a registered women-owned business, which is an amazing thing. And congratulations, because that's a process to go through that.
Oh,
It takes
really
some
is.
work to get that to get that designation. But also just congratulations on going from, losing 98% of your revenue in March of 2020 to reestablishing a huge chunk of that revenue and rebuilding that so that you're only 25% below where you were last year. That's an incredible feat. Tell us first, and I want to explore and get deeper into on how you did that, because that had to require renegotiating with your customers, your suppliers, and your employees, as well as with yourself. So, but tell us first about the journey that got you to where you're at, because you got a lot going on. So I'm like excited to hear about this journey. So
Yeah, I do, and I'll kind of keep it in little small chunks along the way, because you could get where you just blather on forever, and I don't want to do that. But it really started as a little girl, and my dad was an entrepreneur. He was a high school teacher. He was an electronics teacher. We had the first computers that came into existence. No high school had computers in there. But even before that, he was an entrepreneur, because half of our garage was an electronics shop. And I was this little girl, like probably 6, 7, 8 years old. And I would go out there because I wanted to be with my dad, because he was my hero. He was my mentor. And I gave him TV tubes as he was repairing people's tubes. I know I'm dating myself a little bit with that.
I remember that. I was saying earlier, I remember rabbit ears and aluminum foil on rabbit ears, and my dad climbing on the roof to adjust the antenna. Yeah, I know, for all the people who are under the age of 40, you have no memory of it.
No, and I met my husband because of the electronics, because I was working at Radio Shack, and he came in to buy parts to hook those rabbit ears and aluminum foil stuff. He wanted to do that to his stereo. That's how we met. He came back and asked me out.
Oh, that's awesome. And you've been married 34 years. So that was a good negotiation on
Wasn't it? He was the negotiator, let me tell you. He's a great salesman. He still is to this day. That's his career. So he started out in a really good way. But yeah, so I started out, and then my dad just kept, creating more businesses. And so I was constantly working, from a young age all the way till 18, and all these different businesses that he created. So here he was a serial entrepreneur, my brother, and now myself. So yeah, I've always been in either sales, marketing, or customer support my whole career. And I did have a stint in, not always in entrepreneurship. I was in corporate America for quite a while and got to speak and talk and help some of those companies grow. But it's definitely been a journey.
So what led you into Fontis? How did you decide to start that as a company?
So my brother and I started a business, and we had my husband and I have really good friends who are in the print and promotional, and they literally bought and sold businesses in this industry for years. Mm-hmm. They said, hey, why don't you take a look at doing this? There's an opportunity for you. We jumped in. I mean, yeah, we've known them for 10 years and we saw what they were doing, but we didn't even really know what we were doing other than being business owners. So we jumped in. We have learned tremendously, from this. And we got to take a lot of our background. I used to be part of trade shows, back in the day with Comdex and computer shows. So I definitely had my feet. My husband's been in the tech industry for, 30 years. So we were able to really come in and see it from, our customer point of view. So I think that was probably one of our advantages that way. So that's kind of where it started. And then we got to, we had a bigger piece of the business. And then it was just a lot of it was in California. We didn't want to do the California thing anymore. There's a lot of laws and things and whatnot we had to do. And we're like, no, let's just stay Vegas. And we have one up in the Northwest, and we have about 2,500 customers nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
But Vegas is a really unique place because everybody comes to Vegas and they think, oh my gosh, it's Vegas, right? There's such a beautiful business community here. I absolutely have fallen in love with it. And being that women-owned business,
Mm-hmm.
I got to be involved in so many networking things. So I hit the ground running. I'm the show up queen, they call me. And I just show up to everything. That's why you met me at that event.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. One of the things that I've learned from this is the personal development piece I've been involved with for probably 13, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's a powerful piece of being a business owner, because who you are has a lot to do with your business, right?
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
At least that's what I've experienced.
Well, I know that a lot of times, and actually when I was on the Jillian Michaels show just recently, that was actually something that I talked about, was that first and foremost, I am a lifetime student of Christine McKay. I study myself all the time. How do I show up in this space versus this space? Did this person say something that caused me to react in a certain way? What was it that triggered that reaction? Did I like that reaction? Did I not like that reaction? How do I want to change that reaction? It's constantly being in that evaluation state of who I am absolutely drives how I show up in all the aspects of my business, and starting to see patterns. And I'll pop out and say something to my husband and say, ooh, I just realized I have this pattern of behaving in this way in this situation. I need to stop that. Or I like that pattern and I want to do more of it, kind of thing. And so it sounds, I mean, because you do a lot of personal development. So being a student of you is kind of how you get better at being you.
Oh my goodness. That is one of the most beautiful way to articulate that, because it really segues into what I was going to talk about next and how I changed my business.
I read your mind.
You did. You were very, very intuitive. But it's the awareness, right? If you have the awareness of what's going on inside you, you have the awareness of what's going on around you, right? So often we focus on what's going on outside of us and we forget the inside. But because I had been doing that, I think that was one of the keys as to why I was able to see what was happening. So I was seeing what was going on with my customers. I was seeing what was going on in the world. And as a result of that, I was like, okay, these are things I have to be able to pivot and change. And so I started doing the negotiation. I started reaching out. Which of my vendors were still going to be able to do what I needed them to do? I knew what I had to do. What about my relationships? One of the key things that I think besides that is my relationships. Your relationships at home affect your work. Your relationship at work affect your home. And I would always see, you talk about what you're talking about, that student of yourself and how that interaction happens. And you watch it in your family members, you watch it in friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the keys, because that allowed me in that one instance to say, and I'm kind of a logical person. I'm a pattern. I like puzzles, right? And so I was able to, okay, if this happens, then what is this going to happen? What does this do? What does this do? And when I started those things happening January, February, March happened, boom. I mean, we were done. And because of the things I had set up, even our vendors, we only had a handful of vendors that were even in business. I mean, so I went, and we even had a chocolate company turn into a sanitizer company.
Yep.
They pivoted. It was beautiful, right? Because they were thinking ahead like I was, what do we get to do? So we pivoted to the PPE space, right? And being very strategic on who I had relationships with and who I started really working on those relationships even more so. I was able to literally pick up a phone call and say, hey, how can I help? Where can I support you?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, can you do this, 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 and this? And I said, yes. They said, how soon?
Tell me a little bit about how you initiated those conversations with some of those vendors. Because we all know, it's the elephant in the room, right? So, and especially like in Vegas was kind of a holdout location in terms of people being really resistant to, is this pandemic real, or is it fake, or is it fake news, whatever the hell it was. So how did you kind of start to position that conversation, and what kind of preparation did you do in advance of those conversations?
I was probably one of those people that thought this was going to be short-lived. We had the biggest event ever happening end of May. So I was just trying to buy time, right, to get to May, because it was going to be a big, big thing. I mean, we're talking hundreds, like 500, 700 event type of thing.
Got it.
And so when it kept getting closer and closer, and they're saying, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And I was like, okay. But before that, talking to our vendors, there's a lot of negotiation that went on, because some of the stuff they were getting from China, some of the stuff I learned more about customs and how to get things in than ever before.
Ooh, let's talk a little bit about that. I would say, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if that was true, then I wouldn't have cut you off, right? So I actually organized an event. I'm a member of the City Club here in Los Angeles, and we had an event in August with the Port Authority of Los Angeles, a guy who's the CEO of a shipping company, and a number of people. It was related on the supply chain, and we talked a lot about the issues that were facing small businesses because of the supply chain. One, you had the tariffs, then you had stuff sitting in, which absolutely, let's make no mistake about it, tariffs have impacted every small business in this country in a negative way. And then you had that, so that had put pressure on. Then with COVID, stuff was sitting in the harbor. Stuff was sitting in Los Angeles harbor on ships for weeks. It was not coming in. Then it comes into the harbor, and then guess who gets it? Not small business. It got diverted to big companies with big orders, who had contingencies and contracts, who had more leverage and more power in their negotiation with that supplier. So then small businesses are left with their hand out going, I ordered product, where the heck is it? And this is affecting so many industries, the lumber industry, your industry in terms of promotional goods, all across manufacturing. This is a huge problem. How did you, I want to talk about that. What did you learn about customs? What are some of the things that you were able, in that learning, that you were able to leverage in your conversations with your suppliers to get through that?
The one thing that I'm going to clarify here, the one gift that we had is that because we are a small business, we run independently, we do roll up to a $2 billion company.
Okay.
So we have the buying power, right, of them. They help with some of that negotiation, but I'm still calling my local person and saying, hey, I need this. And they're saying, well, you don't have enough product. So it's like, I have a network of people, luckily, that I can go out to and say, hey, let's get together, get our orders together so that we can, accomplish this. And sometimes I was calling up our vendor and saying, hey, you just jacked the price up. What was happening in our industry is prices were literally going up overnight, within 24 hours. You would get a quote from a vendor, and within 24 hours, the price was higher. And so I was having to retrain our customers to say, hey, we've got to make decisions, because they're so used to just holding off and making decisions slowly, right? Or a few days.
Yeah.
And that changed. customs changed to where, like you just said, I can't believe that you actually, not many people know or have that knowledge that you do.
Yeah.
Unless you're in that space.
Oh, it's like, that was one, I have to tell you, that was one of the most, I've worked in supply chain a lot, and I've spent a lot of time in corporate supply chain as a consultant, teaching supply chain and strategic sourcing people how to buy and whatnot and negotiate. But that webinar that we did through the City Club was one of the most eye-opening pieces of information that I'd gotten throughout this entire pandemic about what was actually going on in the supply chain, and it is ugly.
Oh, it was so ugly. If there was one thing not said correctly on a label, it was shipped back to China. I mean, literally. And okay, so listen to this story. So you have these companies in China, right, doing all of this alcohol stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had a big order for a customer. We're talking probably a $60,000 to $70,000 order. Mm-hmm. And they got it off the assembly line. They got it into the dock, but because they won't take it unless there's a certain amount that comes with it, the next thing that came through, their place caught on fire because of the
God.
And
2020.
Seriously, but a lot of that was happening in China because they were having to produce so fast for the world,
right?
That because of that alcohol content, because they wanted, all of a sudden you couldn't have a normal antibacterial, you had to have alcohol at 70% or more,
right?
For it to be valid for a business to reopen or right. to clean or whatever. What was going on behind the scenes, people have no idea. And I was having customers yelling and screaming at me, and I would just listen, and then I would have to educate and just say, I understand your stress. I'm a small business owner too. I get that. This is what's happening. Man, I open the vest. One of the things about me that my customers know, I am very authentic. I am upfront. And one of the things that is another top 3, besides relationship and all these things, is follow through. Mm-hmm. I have testimonials from customers that said that literally because they keep coming back to me mm-hmm. because of the follow through. They always knew what was happening with their order. There was every morning we would wake up and literally have a spreadsheet we would go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I attribute a lot of those practices to why we were able to come back and working with our customers. Unfortunately we've lost some customers that have gone out of business. It's heart-wrenching. But the ones that stayed with us and worked closely, especially with the brand recognition, I have business consultants coming to me, right? And I'm writing a little book, a tiny book right now for them, because they're smaller companies that don't realize. They said, well, we're not going to trade shows anymore. We're not doing this anymore. Mm-hmm. We don't need promotional products. You need it more than ever. You need to be top of mind. And one of the biggest things you can do is a face mask.
Yeah. Put your logo on it and
it's a billboard. It is a billboard.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I actually hadn't thought about that. That's exactly right. So how do you so for those clients who, say this isn't, we're not doing trade shows, we're not doing this. How do you convince them? How do you negotiate with them and kind of move them from that negative positioning to acknowledging that, your face is a billboard now? And how are you?
Let me ask you a question on negotiation. And this could be just my lack of knowledge, but mm-hmm. in my experience, negotiation is education.
Mm-hmm. So, and in my philosophy is negotiation is nothing more than a conversation about a relationship.
Oh, I love that.
Yep. So it's like we got a relationship, we're developing a relationship, we have an existing one, or we've decided we want to separate and not have a long-term ongoing relationship. how does that separation happen in a way that works for both of us? How do we continue to do business together, or how do we start doing business together? But education is I'm a very data-driven negotiator. So for me, which I would suspect you are too, that education is absolutely part of it. But it's also about kind of understanding motives, discovering what the motives are that are driving certain behaviors of our counterparts. And so it's kind of a combination of those things for me.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the why. My customers always say, well, why? Help me understand why, right? And that is part of the negotiation and the education.
Mhm.
Because for them, it's just the stuff they're used to, that pen or that little plastic thing that they, or squishy ball that they throw to their kids, right?
Mhm. Right.
And I share this story, an example all the time. When we did Fontis, we had these beautiful Fontis bottles, and they're laser engraved, and they last, they keep things cold.
Mhm.
And 2 years ago, we had these made, and I saw one, and it's a person for the McCarran Airport. He's kind of
Mhm.
over the McCarran Airport. And I saw him a few weeks ago, and I asked him, he goes, Kim, I still have that bottle. I said, well, what do you do with it? And he goes, I take it to yoga every day. And I'm like, and then I had another customer whose son, it took their bottle that I gave them, and he wouldn't give it back, but he's, in his 20s, and he's all over town with it.
Mhm.
And so what I try to explain to my customers, I'm like, look at your phone, look at your computer. What is something that you have, that you hold, that is of value,
Mhm.
and that has a logo or something that's on it?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
and it's that subconscious, it's that psychology, right?
Yeah.
I said, so why would you spend, $100 on a bunch of little tiny things that are just going to get tossed or thrown away? How about you give them something that has intrinsic value?
Right.
Right. And so those are the kind of things that I try to help them understand. I said, I would rather sit down with you, see who your targets are, make a little gift box. There's hundreds of thousands of items that I have that you can, you want to keep your customers right now. You're not going to get to see them face to face, right? You can't go in there and do that. Why not have something that's on their desk? Why not have something that they wear over their mouth? Something that other people get to see, that they're going to help and you brand for them, right? Or keep you top of mind, or ask about you.
I always like to do forget-me-not seeds. So I'm a huge fan of very nicely handwritten notes. So I like to buy really nice papyrus cards, and especially when I'm networking and I meet people, and I often like to send them a card and then include, for prospects especially, and then send them a package of forget-me-not seeds. And I get emails all
What
the
are
time.
forgets-me-not seeds? I'm going to write that down.
They're just seeds that you just garden seeds, just flower seeds, right? And what people do is I'll get emails back from people saying, I planted these with my grandchild this weekend, and they'll have a picture of them in the planting process, or, oh, these are my favorite flowers, or, and it's just something that it's different. But I have my logo on them so that when they're planting them, they remember. And I mean, I grew up in an agricultural community in Montana, and so it's part of who I am. It's just, so I find that when people are doing promotional things, like doing something that's like also memorable, that is reflective of who you are, is more important than just because everyone gets fidget spinners doesn't mean you should be giving somebody a fidget spinner, right? Kind of
thing. Right. But people think less money, though. That's the thing, is where they go to, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I get that. But I'd rather
that's an interesting component, right? So when I'm negotiating, and this is actually, so as many years as I spent in procurement and working with strategic sourcing people, they get frustrated by me when they're on the other side of the table from me and I'm working on the sales side, because in procurement, you're always taught, people are like, get the lowest price, or get, you got to, and I hear people, beat them up on price and blah, blah, blah. And then when they're talking to me, it's like, I don't want to talk about price. We need to iron out the contract first. And they're like, what the heck? What's the price? What's the price? And I'm like, I don't know what other costs are going to be in the contract. But to your point, right? People go to this low cost thing. What's a low cost thing that I can do? But what are the things, like when you think about your customers, right? And you think about your suppliers and your business, what are some of the things that you have to think about in a negotiation to make sure that you're achieving the margin that you absolutely deserve to make, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all know, if we can research, we can go on the big Google and figure out what, margins are, the average range of margins on an industry. Every Wall Street Journal analyst will tell you what they are. And nobody should be making below their margins, right? So how do you make sure that when you are, when people start diving to price and saying low price matters, how do you elevate that discussion to make it about value and make sure that you're maintaining a margin and preserving your margin and protecting yourself on the cost side?
It's a delicate dance, and I love that you said it so eloquently, because that is the dance, that is the negotiation. Because they'll say, well, I want this, right? And I ask, okay, I'll ask why is that important to you? Why do you what do you want to do with that? What is the intention? Why do you want to give that? I have a customer I currently just worked with, and she says, well, I want a mask. Well, I'm pretty picky on my masks, right? We've all tried lots of different masks right now. And then she says, well, I want to give them something else. I said, well, what is your budget? Right? I always ask, what is a budget? Right?
Oh, thank you. Could everybody please in sales, please, every small business owner, ask for what the budget is. Ask for what the process is. What's their process for getting approvals? How long is it going to take? And do they have the money? Because you can waste so much time having that conversation. As people who do sales negotiation, they tell you this, but so often, or to do sales, they tell you this, but so often people don't do that. So I'm in support of my sales compatriots. Yes, please ask what people's budgets are.
Yeah, I've wasted a lot of time, I'll be honest with you. And there's sometimes I'll get down to the very end of this and they're like, no, that's just, not the way I'm going to go. But I've learned the questions to ask. And budget is a big one. Right. I don't want to, if I bring them something amazing and wonderful, they're like, well, I can't afford that. Well, if I didn't ask, that's kind of crazy.
Right, exactly. And how much time then would you have wasted? And there's cost. I mean, the thing is that you have a customer acquisition cost. And one of the things that I'm really big on in negotiation is understanding your costs down to, as many of my listeners know, my grandmother used to say, the gnat's ass level detail. What is everything that goes into it? Because if you don't know what your numbers are and you don't know what your costs are, then how do you recover that? How do you preserve? How do you grow your business? How do you make your business sustainable? Guess what? You don't, which is the only reason why Kim could go from losing 98% of her revenue in March to recovering the vast majority of that by the end of 2020. So I'm sorry, I just need
I know the breaking.
Get on a soapbox a little bit about that.
It's good because well, and that's what my brother keeps me in line with. Always know, right? But we know where our breaking even is, and we know where we can make, to be able to pay the bills, pay our employees, pay the light bill, all of that stuff. We know what our bottom is,
right?
But if there's a volume, then we can negotiate. We can negotiate that a little bit, right? But if it's the like a 50 piece item versus a 10,000 pieces, big difference.
Well, yeah, because you're defraying cost over a larger number of units, so your cost per unit goes down, and your ability to charge you can adjust how you charge because you have a lower cost per unit.
Yeah, and so and we've had to kind of work with that, right? It hasn't been what it has been in the past. And so, and we also want them to, we want to keep them as a customer too, and help them to grow in this time too. So we really have kept our margins at our breaking point quite a bit. Once in a while, we've been able to go above, but we've been doing that. But as a result of that, we're bringing on more customers.
Mm-hmm.
And we give them the hand holding and the nurturing. And, I do a lot of consulting without necessarily getting paid for a consulting fee, because I bring more value. They, like you just said, you can go to a lot of places online and a lot of places to get a tchotchke or a promo piece or this or that. But how nice is it? I have one of my really sweet customers out of California, and she calls me up and she's like, I just would rather give you the business.
Well, go ahead.
She's like, I can just call you. I have so many things I have to deal with. I can just call you and know it's going to get taken care of.
Right. Well, I have one of my previous guests is a gentleman, and I talk about Scott a lot. His name is Scott O'Neill, and he's the CEO of Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment, which owns the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia 76ers. And they did an analysis around their suppliers and found that the majority of their business was going to the same suppliers over and over and over again. And so they partnered, because they're in Philadelphia, they partnered with the Black community in Philadelphia to analyze what the heck was going on. And they've launched this new program called Buy Black, which recognizes that minority women-owned businesses that are small can't adhere to some of the things that a bigger supplier can do. They can't deliver in the same speed without it seriously impacting margin. They can't produce at the same cost per unit because they don't have the volume. They don't have the steady flow of resources, right? So there are these different things that have come into play. How have you been able, and understanding that you're kind of underneath this very large organization, but with respect to your clients, how has that kind of concept come to play for you in terms of how you're competitive against, really large players who are producing,
It can be tough. And we've lost a few of our customers because we have customers that are bigger than we are in another state, and surprisingly come in and bid on things. And the one piece that I'm going to start doing this year is start contacting those buyers and saying, okay, these people are from out of state. Why aren't you helping your in-state, right? And to me, it's getting the organization that I belong to, which is the WEBEC, the Women Enterprise. We need to probably have a little bit more of a presence. And that's something that I would like to probably change now that I have a little bit more, breathing room from this past year. I think that's important, is just the awareness, right? Sometimes they, like you said, they go for the lowest price.
Right, and exactly. Which is, they're incented to do that, right?
Yeah, they are. And whether you're a university or government, a lot of times they're incented to do that. And I get that. But it's changing, having those conversations, right? Those negotiations of changing that mindset. I love that story that you just said. That's an amazing thing that they actually care about that.
Oh, yeah, he's amazing. And Scott, I will big plug for Scott. I don't think Scott realizes how many times he and his organization get mentioned throughout my show. He's a leader who just leads from a very heart-centered place.
And that's where I lead from as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I know that. And so that's part of why I shared Scott's story, because I think that it resonates with you and what you do in your business and who you are as a business owner as well.
Yeah. The one thing that I have done, you mentioned at the beginning, the Fontis Insider. For me, that platform is where I'm also going to be giving back. That what you don't know what you don't know, right? I have customers who buy just promo from me, but they have all kinds of forms and envelopes and everything else that they do. They don't even know we do that. Even though we tell them, it doesn't register because it's not visual.
Oh, yeah.
And some people do all forms and they don't use any of our processes for promotional products or for apparel or scrubs or all these other things that we can, help with.
Oh,
so
wow.
My Fontis Insider platform is I'm bringing my vendors on. You get to just literally see firsthand my vendors, who I go to, my go-to people, and they're going to show you what's coming out new, what's some specials that are coming out. You can get, save money on this or that, and be able to see firsthand, go up, just pull it up 20, 25 minutes, talk to one of our vendors. You get to I'm going to be interviewing my customers. Anyone that wants to be a customer or a customer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And industry leaders like yourself, right? Coming in and helping our customers, helping people know how to negotiate, right? Having those skills, bringing that value as, a business owner online to be able to just keep giving and giving. The more you give, right? It's that law. I call it a gift shift. It's that shift from being able to give that reciprocity.
Yep.
That law of reciprocity to be able to, I give to you and you want to give in return, right?
That's a huge, and that actually, I'm so glad that you raised that, because that's something that needs to be talked about more with respect to negotiation. Because especially if you're entering into a new contract or you have an existing relationship that you want to continue, the concept of reciprocity is paramount to having a successful relationship. And it is the reason why I also have the saying, you cannot win a relationship, because a relationship is about reciprocity. And when you have that, reciprocity is not equality. I'm going to say that it's not necessarily equality in a relationship, but it is reciprocal. There is reciprocal benefit and gain. And sometimes especially if you're in a relationship, just like you did when things kind of went to hell after, March 2020 and the United States came to a screeching halt, right? Sometimes reciprocity is, this is a relationship that's been working for me for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And guess what? It's not working for me anymore. And reciprocity is being able to have the kind of relationship where you can go to your counterpart and say, oh crap, this relationship that's been working for me for a long time isn't working, and we need to change the relationship. Reciprocity is saying, okay, how do we change it? Right.
Yeah.
And giving each other that permission, that latitude, that respect to do that, to ask for that, and to give and to receive that. I think that's a big thing. And I mean, that clearly, for you to be able to recover so much of your revenue that you had lost at the end of March, that reciprocity exists within your supply chain and your customer base. That reciprocity is what keeps you around.
I believe that too, right? Like you keep saying, it's the relationship. It's being able to renegotiate that, right? Because, sometimes I'll come back and they'll say, well, it was this. Oh, trust me, when we were in that whole other realm, they come back and they, Kim, you told me it was this price, right? And then I'm like, yeah, but, I had to learn really quick. It happened twice to me. And I had to find out really quick. I stopped going to one of my vendors because they kept doing that to me. Right. And now they're calling me now saying, hey, you haven't been working with us. You haven't, been buying from us. Well, there's a reason, right? Because I'm not going to come back to my customer and say, hey, you have to eat it now, right? And some of them have said, Kim, yeah, let's share it. Let's share in this. I said, I can go someplace else and look. They're like, no, we'll just share in this. So there's that relationship where they know they can push back on me and I can push back on them.
Right.
Well,
you mentioned earlier You were talking about how prices kept, going up, and I'm part of this. I get these emails from this guy who will not even know that I'm promoting him probably, but his organization is called Pro Purchaser, and he tells this great story, and I cannot remember his name, but I'll put it in the show notes. But he talks about he tells the story about barbecues and manufacturing barbecues. And when an old-fashioned barbecue, not the gas kind, but the old-fashioned briquette kind.
Yep.
Right. And it's made of steel, right? That's the number one component in it. And he just sent me out an email this last week that about the price of steel, right? Price of steel, zoom, right? Price of rolled steel through the roof, right? And so when we get into these relationships, and one of the things I want to caution some of our listeners, especially if you're in manufacturing, if you are in manufacturing, and I don't care if you're technology manufacturing, medical devices manufacturing, textiles, don't care. If you are dealing manufacturing, your number one thing is to know everything there is to know about your suppliers' costs. Because in your case, Kim, you had suppliers coming to you and saying prices are going up. Well, where were prices when you initially entered into the relationship? And are prices higher today than they were when you initially entered into that relationship and entered into that contract? Or are they just doing a hockey stick right now, right? And so what a lot of people in manufacturing do is they don't pay close enough attention to futures pricing and what's going on in the market and how can they hedge price increases, and evaluating that delta. What were prices of that commodity item at point zero when I entered in this contract? And are they actually higher, or actually are they lower, and they're just trying to take advantage of a momentary increase that isn't actually reflective of my relationship with them? And so paying attention, if you are in manufacturing, know your suppliers' costs, hedge them, figuring that out, negotiate with that so that you have knowledge about that. And I do love that that's one of his big messages, is know your suppliers' costs, because everyone focuses on revenue, right? And at small businesses, I get this all the time. I'm doing great. I've got $1 million in revenue. I've got 50 million in revenue. And I'm like, I care less how your revenue is. What's your profit margin?
Absolutely.
What's your margin? What are you putting in the bank? What are you preserving for growth, right? And if you are negotiating just for revenue, you are completely missing the point. You
Absolutely.
need to negotiate for profit, not for revenue. So
100%.
how is kind of that from a wisdom perspective from this gentleman from Pro Purchaser? How have you seen that play out in your negotiation?
I think what we had happen is it was knee jerk. Everybody was in a panic. Everybody had to have it yesterday, right? That's why I had done some work ahead of time to know who to go to, right, what I was going to go after, and who I was going to help, which of my customers was going to be the most impacted. And a lot of it was my government agencies, right? And so what I did to, figure out who was going to be able to stay in business, who was in that space, right? What the pricing was. But I did talk to one of the owners once, and I just said, hey, this is really he said, Kim, he says, I'm barely keeping up above my head above water. He said, the shipping has gotten out of control.
Yep.
And it was the shipping it wasn't necessarily the product cost. It was the shipping, because they couldn't get the boats here fast enough. Then the boats would get here. Everything you just said, all the bottlenecks
sat there, and
and they weren't wanting things to come from China. People didn't want things to come from China. So people were moving their manufacturing to other locations.
Which that's a time-consuming process. That's like a 3-year process. So just so everybody knows, you don't just one day wake up and say, I'm moving my manufacturing plant from China to, Malaysia, and then poof, it moves. No, that takes effort. Now, and even
People
for
were
contract
panicking though. And
oh,
people were
they were
panicking.
totally panicking. And then you get quality issues and I mean, yeah, but that's actually, so one of an author that I read, and he's in sales. So he talks about sales related negotiation, which, as my listeners know, sales is a part of negotiation, but it's not all of the negotiation. But from a sales perspective, he actually talks about emotion costs you money at the negotiation table.
100%.
Whether you are
100%.
making knee-jerk reactions like Kim is describing, that cost you money that you probably didn't need to spend, right? What were your alternatives? If people had stopped, breathed, taken a moment and said, okay, how does this play out? Let's play this out logically, practically. What does this look like? Then you would have been able to plan differently, like what you did in anticipating this could be a problem. I mean, COVID should not have taken very many people by surprise. It was in the news starting in November of last year. We saw increasing issues with it. The WHO issued warnings. And then we saw this escalation. Now, did we have personal experience with it? Of course not. But a good risk analysis would tell you that the proverbial shit was going to hit the fan, and my production team can bleep that, but they could, it was going to hit the fan. And so what you did is you saw the writing on the wall and started to plan in advance so that you could position yourself to
as the only logical choice.
Exactly.
That's really what my intention was. Fontis was the logical choice to go to. And we hit that for a good 3-month stride, right? And it's what kept our doors open. It really was. And have we had slowdowns? Have we had some slumps, over the, past 6-7 months? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. But we have someone internally who's making phone calls every day to our customers.
Right.
And that in itself was also why we were able to retain our customers and help them along the way as well. And they were like, I'm so grateful to hear from you, Sandy. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be able to hear you, hear your voice and have someone to talk to, because people got lonely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. Business moved from a lot of business, certainly not all business, but a lot of business moved from a 3-dimensional space to a 2-dimensional space, right? Which is a very different kind of communication. It's a different interaction. It takes a different amount of time, and it's just all sorts of things. But hats off to you and your team for really working to, pull things out and rebuild after that disastrous March, and really be on a continual growth trajectory coming out of 2020 and into 2021, because you paid attention. You looked at you didn't read tea leaves, you read the writing on the wall. There were no tea leaves involved. It was right on the wall. And you prepared and you planned. And because you prepared and you planned, you put yourself in a position where you could renegotiate logically, taking into consideration what was going on with tariffs and shipping and things sitting in harbors and all that, and leverage your relationships and maintain those relationships with your customers. So audience, to everybody who's listening and watching, I hope that you've been able to kind of get a really great picture of the things that Kim did to set her company up for ongoing success through this whole pandemic. And renegotiation was really key through her supply chain with her customers. We didn't even really talk about your employees, but we had, in a previous call, we talked about kind of how you had to renegotiate with your employees as well. And, I just really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you being with us here on In the Vent Zone. How can people find you? And I think you had something you wanted to share with the audience. And so
I have a book coming out. If you'll reach out to me at kim@gofontis.com, End of January, it's called The Pivot Point. And it's a short book, but the books that I write are short. They're like 40, 50 pages, right? Something you can sit when you're on the toilet, read when you're on the toilet. But it's just a book that kind of describes a lot of what we talked about here.
Yep.
And then it's going to be the first book of a series. The second one's going to be more of a personal, right? Taking those shifts personally. And then my third book is going to be just people like all of us who have done that pivot, right? And what have they done? What are the tools? What did they use to do that? So that's what I have coming out this year besides the 2 talk shows. So
fantastic. Well, we will put all that in the show notes for everybody. Please check out Fontis, gofontis.com, and follow Kim. And are you on LinkedIn? Can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm YouTube. So
awesome.
Christine, I just want to tell you, thank you so much. You provide such value for your listeners. And I know how much I have gained out of our relationship and the stories that you've shared, with me. And so I just thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. I really appreciated it. So this has been, I've wanted to have you on the show. I love what you do. And it's always interesting to see women in a different kind of space that you wouldn't necessarily normally see you in. And so I always get really excited when I can talk to another woman about supply chain stuff. So.
I love that you have so much knowledge about it, and then we have so much in common with that.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't either. It's so fun.
Exactly. So, well, and I also have a book coming out. So actually, you can go to renegotiation.com and look on our press page to find our order form, so you can pre-order our upcoming book. Why Not Ask? A Conversation About Getting More, where we have wide-ranging conversation about negotiation philosophy, knowing what you want, knowing how to ask, risk related to contract. And we cover everything from prenups and divorce to how to buy a car to software licensing. So it is just an incredible conversation.
I can't wait to read it.
About negotiation. Why Not Ask? A Conversation About Getting More. Check it out. And to everyone listening, thank you again so much for spending your time, which is the most valuable gift that you can give to us. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of In the Venn Zone. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Venn Zone with Christine McKay. We invite you to visit our website at www.venn.zone to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Empower the negotiator in you and successfully level the playing field. Join us again next time here on In the Venn Zone.